Welcome to Average Joe Rock and Roll. I am Michael J. Rock, and I am joined today by guitar extraordinaire Jimi Bell, who is currently in Autograph, Demons Down, and House of Lords. Um, Jimmy, how are you?
Good. Great to see you again, Michael.
Yeah, yeah,
It's a real pleasure. This is a treat for me, considering the amazing conversation that we struck up at the airport that time. It was just great. We just kind of started chatting, and it was a wonderful experience. It really was.
yeah. It's it was kind of a surreal experience for me because I've been a music fan since I first heard music and started real young. My mom was into a lot of the 70s pop stuff, Carole King, James Taylor, a lot of that stuff, and that's how I started listening and liking. And then in the 80s I discovered some heavier stuff. So it was real surreal for me to connect with you at the airport. And you actually struck up a conversation with my wife and I. We
Yeah.
didn't start talking to you. You started talking to us, and it just clicked instantly. So once when you took off, we still had a couple hours left in the airport. When you took off, I got on the phone and I just started looking stuff up. And I since have watched a lot of interviews. I since have watched a lot of music videos. Um, and a couple things that I learned about you is number one, you're super nice and super humbled. And
Thank
number
you.
two, you're a monster on guitar. Like, when people talk about monsters on guitar, the names, Zach Wild come up, Steve Vai, Eddie Van Halen, Nita Strauss, Yngwie. Your name is not in that mix, and it should be because
Oh,
you're
thanks.
right up there. I mean, some of the shredding and some of the solos that you do are second to none.
Well, I appreciate that. Well, it's kind of funny. We talked about so much stuff at the airport, but I did tell you about the Ozzy because I was second for Ozzy. It got down between back in 1986. It got down to me and Zach Wild. And it's funny, the shirt that you're wearing right now, Join Forces. I was in that band at the time, and we I it was on a Wednesday. I got a phone call. I was endorsed by this huge guitar company, Kramer Guitars. I didn't have a record deal at the time, but the president of Kramer, which was they did Eddie Van Halen, Paul Dean, Loverboy, Richie Sambora, Bon Jovi. They had all these massive artists under their wing, and they were right in New Jersey. But the president just loved the way I play. He saw me play one time, and so I got a phone call from him, and he says, "Jimmy," he says, Jakey Lee is out of Ozzy, and they're auditioning guitarists." And he says, "We sent your video, and Sharon Osbourne really loves it, and they want to fly you out." And I just said, "Okay." I said, "Oh my God, this is great." So I said, when am I going, next week? And they said, "No, today. You got to leave right now. There's a ticket for you at the airport." So I had to get to the airport. I couldn't even tell the guys in the band I was going to audition. I didn't want to cause any problems because I was just supposed to go there, audition on Wednesday night, and possibly be back Thursday or Friday, and then I had a gig with Joint Forces on Saturday. But when I got there, I played with Phil Suzanne and Randy Castile, the drummer, and Sharon Osbourne sat there while I auditioned because you didn't audition with Ozzy at the
Sure.
time.
Yeah.
Because there was like 500 people that did this, and Ozzy wasn't going to sit through all that. So I did that, and usually Sharon didn't sit there either, but she wanted to see if I was a waste of plane ticket that she just paid for. But she loved it, and I did really well. And then she says, "I'm keeping you, and tomorrow you're going to play with Ozzy." So the next day came, and I go to this other rehearsal studio that had a big stage, and it's kind of a place where bands would rehearse before they go out on tour. You could, big rigs and everything. So we did that, and so Ozzy came in. I met Ozzy. I tell everybody that it's really strange. You see Ozzy in magazines, TV, whatever, in videos, but nothing is the same. It's nothing like when Ozzy's staring at you face to face. It's really different. It's a whole different experience. And this is when he had just shaved his head that time, and he had gotten that big demon or whatever it is on his upper chest there, the tattoo. So it was great. He came in, and I played like 5 songs, and I started off with "I Don't Know" from the early days with Randy, and as soon as I started playing, I had a really good groove going with the band. And Ozzy started doing that thing where he's rocking with his microphone like that.
Yeah.
And then when the solo came up, he got down in front of the amplifier and he was listening to me play, and it was great. I did a little bit of a guitar solo. Then at the end, Sharon and Ozzy sat down with me, and they said it's between me and Zakk Wylde. And then they took me out to dinner, which was great. I went to this real expensive restaurant with them, like a place where Ozzy really should, really, a place where you wouldn't see Ozzy or rockers normally. It was all business people, probably doctors, lawyers, surgeons. I mean, it was so funny walking into this place. But I remember Ozzy was a little tipsy, a little bit, back then. So he had, I even offered him my cherry tomatoes that were in my salad. I didn't eat them at the time, and he didn't want them. And I turned my head and was talking to Randy Castile. The next thing I know, I saw Ozzy's hand go into my salad and start picking out the tomatoes out of my salad, which is pretty funny. Sharon got him out of there, and back to his hotel. And I went over to the hotel afterwards, after dinner with the guys. And I met the oldest daughter, Amy. And she wasn't the one that wasn't in the Osbourne TV show, the one that didn't want to have anything to do with it. And Amy was a baby at the time. So I remember being in the living room with Ozzy and Amy. And Amy's sitting on Ozzy's lap, and he's bouncing her. And then they had MTV on, and this is great. So they're watching MTV, and this is when MTV played videos because it's the '80s. All of a sudden, Black Sabbath's "Paranoid" comes on, and Ozzy's going, look, Amy, it's Daddy, and he's bouncing her. It was a great experience. And I went out to the Troubadour with the guys and everything. But so the next day I was on a plane home. They never called me to say that I didn't get the audition. But you got to remember, Zakk, didn't look the way Zakk does now. He looked like he was really clean cut.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah.
Yeah, and he played a Les Paul like Randy Rhoads. He's about I think he's 8 years younger than me. So I don't know if that had anything to do with it. I even had somebody tell me that maybe they decided not to go with me because I was left-handed. And Tony Iommi was left-handed, and Ozzy and Tony at that time hated each other, because that's when the whole split just happened. And so it could have been something as strange as that. But, it's one of those things,
So we touched on this at the airport, and and I reflected on that a little bit, and I'm a big fan of a lot of the earlier Ozzy albums, starting with Blizzard of Oz, going up through probably No More Tears, and I get a little bit lost after that. It's like the Randy Rhoads, Jakey Lee, Zakk Wylde years, and I love all those albums, love the Zakk Wylde albums, and And after watching and seeing the stuff that you've done, I just in my head, I'm super curious to see what that would have sounded like if you had been in the band and been, a driving force like Zach Wild was, because obviously it wouldn't be the same songs. It would have sounded different. But I would imagine that I would be saying right now, I'm a big fan of the Randy Rhoads years, the Jakey Lee years, and the Jimi Bell years.
Oh yeah, that would have been a great experience. I ended up Sharon really liked the way I played, regardless of what happened. So Geezer Butler from Black Sabbath was looking for to do a new band. So she sent my video. The next thing I know, I was really heartbroken when I found out about Ozzy, because they didn't call. I just found out about them taking Zach. So that put me in a very bad depression. But I had to move on. And one day, my phone rings, and I pick it up, and there's this English gentleman on the other line, and he says, "Is this Jimmy?" And I said, "Yes." And he says, "This is Terry, Terry Butler." He says, "I'm doing a new project, and he says I've put." Sharon had given me your videotape, Sharon Osbourne, and I'd like to have you come, fly you over, and get together and see what we can come up with. And I'm going, Terrence Butler. I go, what that name? I go, and then all of a sudden I go, oh my God, this is Geezer Butler from Black Sabbath. I go, because I was a huge fan of his playing, especially. I mean, I love Black Sabbath, but when you listen to a Black Sabbath song, like even just the other day, War Pigs came on the radio. And if you listen to the bass that Geezer's playing throughout those songs, he's all over the place playing these incredible bass lines. So I always thought the world of him. So when that phone call really perked me up like crazy. So I went to St. Louis. He had a home in St. Louis. I think his wife, Gloria, had family there, I believe. And then they had a house in Birmingham. So I went to St. Louis first, flew back. And then I was on my first trip overseas to England. I went over to, was picked up in London, brought to a beautiful hotel, and we started rehearsing some stuff over there.
So did you do any recording with Geezer, or did you?
Yeah, I did a bunch of stuff. I did. There's if you go on YouTube, you could actually see live videos of me with Geezer playing. Sorry, someone's calling me. It'll go away in a minute. You could actually see there's a couple studio videos of me performing with Geezer over in England. There's a couple songs. So let me see if I can get you back to where. Are you there?
Yep.
There we go.
Yep.
Okay. And I got to tell you who that was. That was. This is the weirdest thing. That's my buddy Sean Clush. It just called. Just so you know, Sean Clush is like the #1 Elvis tribute guy in the world. He's endorsed by Graceland, and I'm really good friends with him. You would think he's Elvis. He's over in London, over in England, doing 3 sold-out shows right now. So he was FaceTiming me from England. Just funny as hell. But anyway, so yeah, I there's a couple videos on there, and then I was doing one day I was in the studio. We moved studios over into a place just outside of Brighton. It was an old English Air Force base, and we started rehearsing there. And Geezer walks in and says, "Hey, do you have you written anything? You got anything that's kind of similar to a Black Sabbath song?" Because Geezer wanted to do something lighter. He wanted it heavy, but with keyboard. He was trying something different. He was trying to do heavy, but keyboards, a little bit more melodic. So I said, well, actually, I do have a song that's kind of like a Black Sabbath song. I said, I just wrote it. so I played him all the music for it, and I said, I actually have a title. I said, I don't write lyrics, but this title popped into my head. And he said, well, what's the title? And I said, Master of Insanity. So he says, I like that. We recorded the song, and Giza wrote all these lyrics off of what I gave him, the title that I gave him. So anyways, we get signed to a deal, and this is typical of music insanity. We get signed, we do a showcase, we get signed. I come back home and I get a phone call from Giza's wife. She goes, Jimmy, I have some bad news. She goes, the person that signed you, I can't remember what label it was. I think it was MCA, I want to say. I don't know, remember exactly. Anyway, he got caught doing something. I don't know what it was, something with money or, whatever. He got fired. All his projects got fired. Any of his new signings got fired. So the whole thing got tanked. So Geezer ends up going out and playing bass for Ozzy for a little bit on an Ozzy tour. Next thing I know, 1992, you hear rumors of Black Sabbath getting back together with Ronnie Dio. I get a phone call from Geezer's wife, Gloria. She goes, Jimmy, she goes, how you doing? I go, well, she goes, I have some wonderful news. She goes, as you know, Black Sabbath's getting back together with Ronnie Dio. And she goes, we're going to use your song, Master of Insanity, on the record. And I was like thrilled. I was going, I was saying, oh my God, a song I wrote is going to be on a Black Sabbath record. And she goes, but we have one problem. She goes, we can't give you songwriting credit because Tony Iommi would never allow a song from another guitar player on a Black Sabbath record. We have to say Geezer wrote it. However, Geezer will have your name in his special thanks, which it is there, and we will pay you for the song at the end of the tour. So what was I going to do? I was in no position to say, I'm going to fight this or anything, it's one of those things.
That's a lot to be in, yeah, for sure.
I don't want to cause problems either. These are big people. That's the one thing you don't want to do. You don't want to make waves with people that are like that. Even though when it's not right, it's still, sometimes you have to take the higher road.
I had heard there was a lot of stuff from early Ozzy with Bob Daisley.
Yeah, same thing.
Yeah.
Yes, exact same thing. So, as it turns out, I let the song, the record comes out, the song I wrote gets mentioned in a lot of the reviews as being one of the better songs on the record, which did my heart good. And they actually played the song live. In other words, it was in their set. It wasn't like just a filler song for the record. It was good enough to make their live show. So they ended up, I went and saw them a couple times, and finally, I went through my life. The tour ends. I never got any money. Of course, I wasn't expecting any money. I didn't expect to get paid. Finally, I run into Ronnie Dio years later when Ronnie's out after he left Sabbath again, and he's out on his solo tour. And I walk into a room to meet him, and I just kind of walk up to him. I go, "Hey, Ronnie, I'm Jimi Bell," and he points at me. Jimi Bell, Master of Insanity. And I went, He goes, yep. He goes, I know you wrote the song. He goes, I told him, and then the guy was supposed to be doing something else. Ronnie was supposed to be doing something with this promotion thing. He ditched that. He brought me over to the side of the room and must have talked to me about a half hour to 40 minutes about this song. And he was explaining, he says, I told these people just to pay you. I said, why, what's the big deal? Just pay the guy and this and that. So anyway, the guy, he took so much time with me, and it was such a gentleman. anyway, so I go through my life telling people that I wrote this song, and I'm an honest guy. People believe me, but and it came out in a lot of books. My name is mentioned in a lot of books about Black Sabbath.
So, so you mentioned, speaking of books, have you ever thought of writing one?
I've had people told me they're going to write a book about my life. They're actually, they want to do, I don't know what you would call it, a biography of my life because they find my life very interesting.
Yeah, I'd read that.
I guess, about the struggles, what I go through because I'm one of those guys that have come so close to doing something really massive for years. I mean, it could go back as far as me being with touring with Joan Jett when we did I'm in a movie with Joan Jett and Michael J. Fox, the movie Light of Day.
Yeah,
I'm in that. We toured with Joan a little bit. Joint Forces did, and then when that we toured it with Joan, and then when the tour ended, that part came up for the movie. Next thing you know, Joint Forces got called to play the band the Huns in the movie. So when you go and see the Huns on stage playing, that's all of Joint Forces. And I'm right next to Joan. You'll see me with my white leather jacket, my white left-handed guitar, and we're in that scene. And Joan always treats me great. Matter of fact, I was just with Joan a couple weeks back. They had passes for me. I went back every time Joan's around. We got her and I got along so well. Even during the tour, her and I were, got along great. I was the only person that she actually has a photo with her that was able to take a photo with her and I. So it was one of these things. We just had a great connection. Her manager, Kenny Laguna, a great guy, always was kind to me. So anyways, getting back to the thing about Ronnie, later a book came out that finally that Ronnie Dio was interviewed for, and Ronnie Dio said it in the book that one of his favorite songs on the Dehumanizer record was Master of Insanity, that was written by guitarist Jimi Bell, and the lyrics were by Geezer Butler, because they were talking about lyrics, because Ronnie wrote a lot of lyrics. He says, but with the exception of that one song. And he said he loved the song. He absolutely loved it, which was another thing that made me thrilled. And then finally,
experience.
Yeah. And then finally, as we were talking about prior, Geezer Butler's book came out, and Geezer finally admits it in his book that him and I wrote the song.
Yeah.
So now, and then he goes on. You'll have to get to that point, but the second time my name appears in Geezer's book, talks about why it's difficult for Tony to take songs from another guitar player because. I play way different than Tony, so he had to learn those parts. If you listen to the song "Master of Insanity," you'll understand. There's a little bit intricate guitar thing at the beginning, so it's one of those things. Yeah, my life would make a great book.
Yeah, like I said, I'd love to read it. So speaking of you've mentioned a lot about writing music, but you don't write lyrics. I noticed on all the album credits you do backing vocals. Have you ever taken the lead vocal?
No, I'm not a lead vocal guy. Like with Autograph, I always take the lower harmonies. I suppose if I took vocal lessons and really pursued my voice, I actually never really sang too much in a band until when I was in House of Lords. I started to do some background vocals, but from off of House of Lords, the bass player Chris McCarville and BJ Zampa, the drummer, we had a band called Max Explosion that we put together that was in between House of Lords tours. We wanted to do something, and Chris was the lead singer of that. But that forced me into doing a lot of vocal training. So a lot of vocals. So I had to learn all the lower parts. And because every song that Max Explosion had 3-part harmony. So when the opportunity for Autograph came up, after Steve had quit. Um, I told Randy, because Randy Rand had, contacted me, and he knew about me. I knew all the guys anyway, because of my friendship with Steve Lynch prior to and so it just worked out when they asked me if I could sing, because they already liked the way I played guitar, but me being able to sing backgrounds was a plus. So every song that Autograph does live, every song has 3-part harmony in it. We don't, and we don't use tracks or anything. A lot of the people are amazed about our vocal harmonies. Some people think we're using tracks, but we're not. It's all live, everything.
Yeah, I've been going through those catalogs, and there's some really good stuff in there. I wanted to go back to Join Forces. Uh,
Yeah.
so when I listened through that stuff, there's some really cool stuff on there. I wish I discovered that back in the day, but I'm discovering it now, so better late than never. Um, I'm noticing, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm noticing a strong Van Halen influence in
Oh
some
yeah.
of the songs, especially the song "Nobody's Fool." Um, that song, I listened to it and I'm like, is that Join Forces or Van Halen?
Yeah, Nobody's Fool was. You got to understand something. I'm a big. My influences. I'm older, so my influences. I'm 65 years old. My influences are from way back. The early guys. When I started playing at 14, and I was a drummer prior to being a guitar player. I had a drum scholarship. I played drums from the ages 10 to 13. I had a scholarship for drums at the Hartford Conservatory, and I was jamming with some guys here at my house. I actually took over my parents' house. Right over here in the down here. My drum set was set up, and the guys were in high school at the time. I was in junior high. They left, and the guitar player left his guitar just out of the case, leaning against the amp. So I said, "Oh, cool." So I turned on the amp, picked up his right-handed guitar. I'm left-handed, but I held it upside down, and he had this old '70s Big Muff fuzz box. I turned that on, and I hit the low string, the low E string, and it went bam like that. And I started making noises, and I said, "Oh my God, I love this!" And I'm telling you, right then and there, I dropped drums, and I said, I have to be a guitar player. I dropped my scholarship. And from that point on, late 13, early 14, I started playing guitar. So one of my first guitar players I fell in love with was Johnny Winter. I was a huge Johnny Winter fan. Uh, and I liked him because even though he was a blues guitarist, he played a lot of ripping stuff. And then I discovered Richie Blackmore, and then that's where my love for Deep Purple came. And and then finally, to get my speed picking stuff up, I discovered Al Di Meola, who was playing with Chick Corea and stuff, and he had this incredibly clean, precise picking technique. So I kind of like took the style of Johnny Winter, Richie Blackmore, and Al Di Meola and kind of crushed them into something and made my own. And then, of course, later on, I became a huge fan of Michael Schenker. Keep in mind, this is all way before Van Halen. I even heard Van Halen. But
Sure.
when Van Halen came out in the late 70s and I heard Eruption, I knew exactly what Eddie was doing during that part. And even though people were going, what the hell is that? I knew it was tapping because I learned the trick by watching Rick Derringer play. Rick Derringer would pull a note, he'd go, and then hit a note like that. In fact, one of the first recordings of that I recall is Billy Gibbons doing it in Beer Drinkers and Hellraisers. There's a part in his solo. He goes, and he goes, like that. So he does that. And so that's when that trick, when I heard that. So I discovered, working with the two-handed thing. So when Eruption came out, I immediately was able to figure it out once I heard the notes that was going on. So yeah, Nobody's Fool definitely has that. It's almost like the later Van Halen with Sammy Hagar, that song, Finish What You Started,
Yep.
that tune that they did. Come
Yep.
on, baby, finish what you,
Yep.
that bluesy type thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of that. Shy in Love is another song that's a very Van Halen influence, you know, that has that Hot for Teacher beat, you know.
Noticed that throughout a lot of the stuff. One song I wanted to ask you about too was a song Phantom Love. Um,
Yeah.
that's a really cool ballad. Kind of has a like a haunting sound to it. I don't know if that was intentional or not. But
What sound?
killer track. Phantom Love.
Phantom Love. Yeah. Who'd you say it has a sound like?
It has a haunting sound.
Oh, Haunting. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was supposed to be like that. Now, if you got the Joint Forces CD, you'll see there's another version of Phantom Love on there. Did you see that? There's two versions of it.
Well,
Yes. You look on that. There's a bonus.
yeah.
There's a second one. Now that for originally Phantom Love was a mid-tempo ballad, mid-tempo rock thing. It was like boom, bump, bum. So you'll listen to that, and that is the first version of the song. When we went to do the Joint Forces EP, the producer was married to Lydia Criss. Lydia Criss was Peter Criss from Kiss,
Okay.
his ex-wife. So they lived in Peter Criss's house. So that's where we went and did some stuff. So yeah, Phantom Love then became a ballad at that point.
Okay. Yeah. I've made it through most of that. I haven't heard the whole thing yet, and I'll have to go back and revisit it. Like I
Yeah,
said,
the words are the same.
your
The
your
word like
catalog
so
is
the
massive.
what's
So
that?
I said your catalog is massive. So
Yeah.
haven't had a chance to check out everything yet. I'm slowly working through it. You know, like I said, I instantly became a Jimi Bell fan. And
Huh.
then everything else has just been a fallout of that. And unfortunately, Jimmy, we're running out of time here.
I told you.
Yeah, yeah.
There's so much to
Um,
talk. Call me. Do another one when you want. Call me
yeah,
when you want to do another show. Just call me. We'll keep going. I
yeah,
don't mind, Mike.
we definitely will do that. Always enjoy talking to you. I look forward to future conversations. Um, with that, we're going to close out. I am Michael J. Rock. I am a rock fan. Enough said. Thank you, Jimmy.
You got it.